Is this the same link? Because I'll tweet it out, or you can tweet it out. Okay.
It's the same link. Yeah, I think it's the same link.
Well, someone wants me to tweet. One wants me to tweet it out.
Somebody wants you to tweet it out.
I said someone needs to tweet it out. You should tweet it out.
I should tweet it out.
I'll mess it up.
I don't
tweet
know.
It out. Tweet it out. I don't know. Whatever. It's not,
we're live. Oh, it automatically tweets it out. So I don't usually do production, and Chrome was not acting right. But we have one person. Woo! Welcome to the Petty Party with Brandon and Anoa. Woo woo! Late Tuesday night. I've already been uber petty and aggressive and bitchy to my family tonight, so I'm ready to go. I'm ready for tonight. What's going on? How you doing, Brandon?
I'm all right. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing here. What are we talking about tonight?
What are we talking about? We're talking about a whole bunch of petty shit. That's what we're talking about tonight.
Watch it. What? Yeah. Okay. We are. So take us away. You're the host. You know, we had a lot of Black women not getting the microphone today. So
we had a lot of Black women not getting the microphone today. And shout out, Ben actually had a really great panel lined up for that discussion. And I guess there were technical difficulties. Look, folks be out to get us because they know that Progressive Army, that we are like the next thing coming, ready to like, yeah, y'all like my jailbird braids. Yeah, I mean it's been a rough day. It's been one phone call, one thing after another. But Black women, I mean, there was a lot happening today. There was a thing with April Ryan. I guess there was something with Angela Rye too, which I didn't even catch what happened with Angela Rye. Black women been getting mad disrespected today because then you throw in Rachel Dolezal too. Like it's just mad disrespect happening to Black women today. Like Rachel Dolezal is an insult to white people who engage in like progressive and social justice work. Then she's a threat. She's a insult to Black women who exist, right? Like it's just really crazy. And white people keep giving her a platform, and she has a book and all this other stuff. Is ridiculous.
Not only white people, but Black people as well. There must have been at least 15 articles in the Root, the ostensibly Black online, whatever magazine, about Rachel Dolezal or whatever how you pronounce her name. But I don't want to get into that quite yet. But we can start with that, but I would have preferred to start with healthcare because I thought that was what we were going to start with.
But we can start with healthcare because that's been some really petty, and I personally have been pretty petty on that as well. But that's okay because that's what we do, right? We're petty, we're progressive, and we're political. 3 Ps. Go ahead, Brandon. Kick us off with healthcare. What's going on with healthcare this week?
Last week. Let's start with last week. Last week, Ryan, the GOP's death cult bill got shut down. And immediately after, Bernie Sanders started, pushing as should have been the unified front by the DNC, single payer public option. He put that stuff back on the table while DNC was resting on their laurels and talking about, we did it, this is the victory for us, and look at all we did. And I can't believe, it's a sad day for Ryan. And of course, people who are aware of the way this, the pitfalls of the insurance industry know that for a fact, Donald Trump is actually kind of right. Obamacare is going to explode. It's just like, that's just the nature of it. There are no safeguards in place for copay deductibles. Obamacare is not a sustainable model for providing health care for the country, which is not unfortunate. Well, it is unfortunate in the sense that liberals seem to love the idea of reaching universal coverage through private insurance. They love that idea. Liberals love the idea that we can have this complex mechanism
or universal more than what we have, right? Yeah, because that's the other thing. Because that's Nancy Pelosi's thing today is, we just need to fix some of the holes and we're good.
Yeah, it's still because they are resigned to solving this problem of uninsured people by going through private insurance. They are dedicated to this. They love the I was watching the Majority Report on Monday with Michael Brooks, friend of the show, great guy, and he made a great point.
We just started the show and we already have friends.
The neoliberals who run the Democratic Party are in love with the technocracy. They're in love with wonks. They're in love with complex math and complex statistics and these economic policies, and they poo-poo anything that is incredibly simple on face. So a single payer healthcare plan is incredibly simple. You're a citizen of a country, you get a little card, ID, like, hey, whatever, prove you're a citizen, and boom, you're covered. Like it gets rid of so much red tape, it gets rid of so much bureaucratic mess, it gets rid of all of the problems that people claim they have with the government, which is bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But this sort of neoliberal ideologism, there are a lot of ways to look at it, right? But whatever reason they're doing this, they seem to be resigned to solving it through private insurance. They seem to be resigned to do that, but that's simply not it's not a good plan. It's not the same thing. They're trying to present it as though it's exactly the same thing as single payer. It's just as good. But there are two reasons why it's not the case. One ideological and one practical. Practically, the current industry is full of bureaucracy, it's full of waste, it's full of corruption, it's full of all these things. And ideologically, we should be positioning health care as a human right, not industry. Not industry. But go ahead. I've been talking for a while.
No, and you make such a great point, because here's the pettiness of the main guard Democratic Party, because they're so damn petty and don't want to quote unquote concede power or whatever their issue is, that they're not willing to embrace not only the momentum, right? Oh, they keep saying, oh, it's just never going to work. It's just never going to work. Like you just said, Republicans acted like they had a mandate from God, right, to replace the ACA. They have been trying for 7 years. They had the trifecta. They got the president that's on their side. They got all of Congress. They couldn't even get it together. Why? Because even their own constituents, their own quote unquote base was like, nah, this ain't happening. You can't do this. You have a majority of Americans who think something like a Medicare for all is a better solution to what we have now. Instead of building and organizing and mobilizing, well, I think we just need to fix the ACA because no one's ever going to let us do this other stuff. Oh, you mean your owners in the insurance industry aren't going to let you do that? That's really what we talk about here.
So you laid out there. The Democrats taking responsibility for the AHCA. Jesus Christ, can you talk about the AHCA not passing? Is hilarious, because the only reason the AHCA did not pass was because the Republican Party couldn't figure out how many people they wanted to kill. Like it's like that. It's like that was the reason it didn't pass. So there were basically there were three groups in the Republican Party. There were your Paul Ryans, who kind of wanted something along the lines of the ACA still in place. They just wanted sort of a symbolic repeal. Or I don't know what that bill. I've taught college classes, so I've seen things handed in that you had a month to do, but you did it last night. I've seen that before. I've seen it.
Well, they have had 7 years, right, to have the bill. They've had 7 years. Talk about petty. When you have a teenager who decides to sit right next to you and starts playing music on her damn phone.
Oh no, yeah, but the Republican Party had 7 years, but they weren't
all the way.
They were not actually trying to repeal Obamacare, because Obamacare doesn't exist. Like, Obamacare is not a real thing that they were trying to repeal. It was something that existed in their fundraising slogans. It was like they had created this.
Well, resistance is something that only exists in their fundraising slogans, right? Shout out to who are we going back and forth with about insulting the resistance? Like, these people are so, like, when we talk about snowflakes and crybabies, like, these people are snowflakes and crybabies all the way. Oh my God, you said something bad on Twitter. Are you blaming Obama? Shout out to Neera Tanden, who wouldn't know organizing if it bit her in the ass. Like, let's just be real, right? Like, shout out to, who was it, Scott, who was upset because Glenn Greenwald wants people to stop, with the British MP chick, to stop holding her conspiracy theorist, conservative nutcase self up as like
Louise Minch.
Yeah.
Oh no, Louise Minch is
like everybody can agree that we need people now. And I say we, like, people need to, like, Americans, liberals, progressives. Like, I'm following people now who actually retweet her as if she's making sense. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you? It's something wrong with that woman.
Let's run through, because we're getting a little bit off track. We're getting a little bit off track. But let's run through some of the conspiracy theories.
But it's all still tied in.
Louise Minch has. It is. I'm gonna bring it back around. Louise Minch has espoused. So she believed that the mobile florist in her neighborhood was an agent of the Kremlin. She believed that, what was it?
There was a Kremlin spy plane recently in Connecticut, right?
In Connecticut.
I didn't know spy planes just land in commercial landing strips like that.
Oh yeah, she believed that Andrew Breitbart was assassinated by Putin. She believes that the recent terrorist attack in London was both planned by Russia, but simultaneously was planned by Russia, but also simultaneously anti-Russia. It was hard to follow that one, to be perfectly honest. But this gets us all the way back around to the people who are being elevated within the resistance, and back around to the fact that Bernie Sanders is still one of the most popular politicians in America. And people keep misunderstanding why. I think that we have this sort of grand, big man theory of history.
Did you forgot that that Anthony Weiner's most latest cyber sexting scandal was actually he was framed by Russia too.
No.
Basically, everything is because of Russia. The 15-year-old, the underage kid that he was texting and possibly sexting was a Russian plant. So this is the type of nonsense that she puts out there. And so the point that was being made earlier was that people like Donna Brazil and other people who are supposedly leading the resistance need to stop giving that person voice and credence. So this person went on this whole long tirade about how Glenn and his tone, and he was denigrating the real resistance, the people who are not on Twitter, who are actually doing the work. But here is our point, and it's a point that we constantly make. Democrats will manipulate the elite leadership. They will manipulate. They will use everybody else's blood, soil, toil, and work to bolster themselves, to send out fundraising emails, and to look like they're doing something. This gets back to your point about the defeat with the bill last year. That wasn't the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party couldn't find its way out of this whole mess. It's been gloom and doom this whole time. That was people organizing, engaging, calling, standing up. That was Bernie Sanders going to places like West Virginia and talking to people straight up like, hey, what do you think about, like, what, don't you think you deserve health care, blah, blah, blah. So,
but the Democratic Party, they hate Bernie Sanders, and here's why.
Right.
So you talked about this a little bit before about the Democratic Party establishment, the people in Congress and the Senate, or specifically the Senate, being so corrupted by private interests that they cannot even come out in favor of single payer and in favor of, even really public option. They're having trouble coming out in favor of, because as we know, $17 million have been funneled into, various members of Congress, various members of the Senate by the health insurance industry. It's a big industry. And so for the past 30 years, they've been positioning themselves as though they believe in single payer. They believe in universal health care. They believe in all of these grand sort of FDR, social safety net, progressive ideals, but they just can't do them. Going all the way back to Clinton and maybe a little bit before, it's been, well, of course we believe these things, but you don't understand. If we're going to win the presidency, if we're going to stop the Republicans, if we're going to, be able to control the country and keep Democrats safe, we have to run to the center. They've been running for this. They've been running to get this mythological, social liberal, economic conservative vote, like this theoretical center of America. But that person they're running for doesn't exist. That person who is, would be in favor of the Democratic Party's very, very shallow social policies, but would be against single payer, simply doesn't exist. And Bernie Sanders is going out there and he's traveling to West Virginia. He's traveling to deep into, Trump country, deep into red states, and breaking that myth, like showing that fallacy that, actually, these things the Democratic Party has been telling you they believe in, but they're just generally unpopular in America. No, everyone likes them, and they're universally loved. They're like, this is not these supposed to be just ideals of the radical left. In reality, they're things that everyone believes in, but the Democratic Party, the arbiters of what the left economic strategy should be, have sort of just been told themselves, or rather told their base, their liberal rank and file, that these things are impossible. They're not impossible. They're impossible both structurally and because of the system, systemically and economically, of course, because America cannot afford to provide healthcare for all these people. Canada can do it because they only have 31 million people, but America has 390 million, so they can't possibly afford to. But not only can we not afford to, but it's just not popular enough. And that's why they hate Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders is going out there and he's dispelling the myth of the Democratic establishment that they've been pushing for the past 30 years, that leftist economic policies are not popular and you can't win on them. And we've seen that myth dispelled over and over and over again by people like Bernie Sanders, by any time anyone speaks to leftist populist, populist economic values, we've seen that they're just wildly popular. But I don't know if this is the Democratic Party just being so corrupted by private interests that they can't afford to support these things, or if they really
can. They don't want to. They're like drug addicts. They're like drug addicts.
I was going to say, or rather, they're just beholden to some sort of radical neoliberal ideology that they really believe that for some reason single payer healthcare would be a moral detriment, would be some sort of detriment to American society in a way that, providing universal coverage due to private insurance would not be. And that is a big issue. Like, are they ideologues or are they just corrupt? It really doesn't matter because it all ends with the same thing. But I sit out here and I wonder, Bernie Sanders is just making them look bad. Because he's making them actually show their colors.
He is, but then he also makes himself look bad too. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because he does make himself look bad, but he also makes Democrats look bad because he makes he is going out there and he's demonstrating, and I say this all the time, people out there are self-identifying as liberal. I mean, Democrats are self-identifying as liberal, but they're not liberals. Like they don't have that kind of coherent ideology. They're not out there engaging that ideology. Most Democratic rank and file are not liberals. What they are is that they are Democrat. They belong to the Democratic Party. That's their ideal.
It's like when you're raised in a certain church and stuff, like we've talked about before. You've made this point before. Yeah.
They're culturally and socially and emotionally Democrats. And they have assigned their ideology as whatever the Democratic Party does, I'm for. Whatever my perception of what they do, I'm for, because they're the arbiters of what it means to be liberal and the left. And what again, what Bernie Sanders is doing, this is why they hate him. They hate him because he's popular, not despite the fact that he's popular. What he's going out there and doing is he's proving, like, he is demonstrating the huge ideological schism between the Democratic Party's rank and file and their establishment. And that sort of hyper awareness that people are getting, that just basic everyday liberals, that the Democratic Party does not represent them in terms of their everyday issues, is very problematic for them, because the Democratic Party can't stand up to that kind of scrutiny from their constituency. They just simply can't stand up to people going like, oh wait, I thought the Democratic Party was in favor of this, not this. I've been talking for a while. I've been mansplaining things at you. You should definitely go for it.
I know, but that's what y'all do. Black women at work and all that other good stuff, right? That's what all y'all do. It's okay. I'm the only. That's why it's right, because I'm a petty Black feminist. So it's okay.
Rachel Dolezal.
Rachel Dolezal. But no. Like, and then so just segueing kind of out of this or whatever. I think the pettiness and the petty. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna share my personal petty healthcare story. My personal petty healthcare story has been spending the past 2 days explain to people that, one, the memes put out, but just as Democrats, a brand new Congress, I love and respect the people who work for both, whether I absolutely agree with their exact course of action, put out incorrect information yesterday. And not only, and everybody's like, oh, well, they corrected it. Yeah, not though the fact that so many other groups and large people with large reaches had shared their memes that had the wrong damn information. What is the wrong damn information? You have a meme about people who did not co-sponsor or have not stated they support House Bill 676, and you list John Conyers, who's the damn sponsor of the bill, as one of the people to be contacted for not sponsoring or co-sponsoring or supporting it. How do you do that? How, Sway? How you do that?
Because John Conyers. I'm sorry. No,
well, John Conyers is not the great white hope Bernie. So because you already know, ain't no way. And people could say, well, Bernie Sanders is the most popular. I don't care. This is not high school. This is not yearbook superlatives. Like, seriously, like, we got to get our minds right around the issues and the values at stake that matter, and not about, oh my God, what is Bernie doing? Well, Bernie put this back on the conversation table. Bernie's not the only one that's been talking about this stuff. It is great that Bernie Sanders has the momentum, has the people, has the support, has the platform to really start pushing this. But what does he do on Anderson Cooper when he gets the opportunity to really just know this is what we need to be doing? We got DFA, we got Justice Democrats, we got NNU, we got all these different organizations pushing Medicare for all. We got people in Appalachia saying Medicare for all. People in California, you got people in the deep rural Appalachian mountains and in the coastal California cities saying the same damn thing. And Democrats want to just put a patch on a broken ass system on a busted tire. Are you serious? When are we ever going to have as many people united around an issue of this magnitude as we're starting to have right now? This is where the money and investment needs to be in, not all this, we just put a patch on the tire and keep running until the air starts to run out again. That's ridiculous. And then even Bernie's like, well, there are things that we could do in the interim. So here's the incrementalism that Bernie Sanders, so this is why I'm being petty right now, because I can. We all have our roles. Like there's so many people to be positive and rah. I'm not here to be a cheerleader. Like I absolutely appreciate and will get down whatever ultimately we need to do and get to getting. Because you know what, my little sister needs better healthcare insurance than what we just got snookered into and wasted money on the damn exchange. Yes, it'll give her 3 free visits. 3 free visits for preventative care. But she has issues related to rheumatoid arthritis that aren't going to be covered under the fucking preventative care visit. How about that? Like the specialist that she needs to go to. I live in the city of Atlanta. There is not a specialist in the entire metro area that will accept the insurance that's supposed to be a good value for her as a college student that we got off the damn exchange. Nothing better than just lowering the Medicare age to 55. And if that single option, if the public option that is put into Obamacare, if that is not robust, right? Because this is what, because let's just be clear on what's doing. Everyone's like, well, Bernie's putting Medicare for all back on the table. No, it's already been on the table. There's so many, we need to stop doing that, right? There are a lot of people out here who do work, who grind, who are out here organizing and mobilizing. We have to stop elevating. Let's just be honest. An old man, I mean, Bernie's awesome. Maybe he'll be like President Carter and live, another 20, 30 years. Maybe, but maybe not. Our movement, because we were focused on a campaign, but now we're in movement mode, right? So we cannot have a movement built around a person. Because when you look at the civil rights movement, when you look at the Black Power movement, when you look at historical movements for change, successful efforts were built around ideas and strategies and values, not people.
I agree. And so we talk about John Conyers' bill, right? The bill that's been in the Senate, been in the House, been introduced in the House every year.
Since 2003.
Since 2003 when it was first introduced with Dennis Kucinich. So I don't think it's a contest, right? I don't think this is a contest.
Not at all.
Definitely not. But what becomes problematic is, and I think that it's great that Bernie is using this sort of for lack of a better word, a bully pulpit. He's getting out there and he's hammering home this idea that single payer is worthwhile. It is widely accepted. It's all these great things. But this becomes a problem when people can't seem to stop focusing on, they don't want to look a little bit even further behind, right? They don't want to even say, okay, well, what was going on in 2015 with, Medicare for all? What was going on with this and that? The issue becomes, of course, that it does demonstrate how tight a hold the Democratic Party had over the conversation. The fact that most people did not know about this bill, the fact that even, the people who are supposed to be reforming the Democratic Party were able to, forget that this bill exists, really demonstrate the fact that if Bernie Sanders did nothing else,
the fact that you're sending out emails to fundraise to get people to do stuff off of this bill and then turn around and mess it up like the next day yourself. But let me this whole conversation about Bernie versus Conyers, and I just want to explain something. My whole thing is not that, somehow Bernie Sanders is wanting or lacking and John Conyers is a replacement. See, this is where the acolytes get it confused, because there are a lot of us who believe and been really deeply ingrained. Like, yes, Bernie Sanders brought us all together, and this movement, this process, that campaign gave us an outlet and purpose and meaning. But this has always been bigger than that. So let's just keep it all the way funky, because if they was really trying to win from the jump, things would have went very, very differently than what it did. You wouldn't have had some of the stuff that went down, and hopefully someday some of the staffers will finally be honest about what went wrong. Because here's the problem. We got a lot of people in this movement spinning their wheels and not doing things that are productive, in part because of the very poor leadership structure that came out of the campaign cycle. So we can't act like Bernie is our leader on the one hand when he ain't really leading shit in this movement. This movement is made on the backs of grassroots activists, workers, a lot of y'all who've been doing digital campaigning, people who've even been helping to build up digital media and stuff like that, right? That's not to slam Bernie. At the end of the day, like somebody says to me, well, Bernie's a politician. That's right. Bernie's a politician, and Bernie going to politic and do what he do. That don't mean that he's bad. That doesn't mean he can go hard for the people. We ain't gonna do what he got to do. But at the same time, Bernie's a politician, and he keeps telling everybody, I love my people who draft Bernie for a third party. Bernie ain't fucking starting an old damn third party. He has said it. He has said he's not doing it. He didn't discount it. Look, folks out here trying to get you to. Folks out here using Bernie to fundraise. Okay, everybody does it. These candidates running in races do it. Different organizations do it, whether they have his blessing or not. Like everybody does it, because progressives out here repeating the DNC model, even though they hate the DNC. Let's just be funky. This is the first episode of the Petty Party. We just petty as hell up in here.
No, but this thing, and I think there's a bad take and there's a good take to take away from Bernie Sanders, right? His popularity. People are trying to take this away. There's something inherent to Bernie Sanders when really he's just some old dude. He is just like, if there is one thing about Bernie's personality that is incredibly nice, is that he's incredibly earnest. Like he's incredibly earnest, he's incredibly genuine in the way he espouses ideas. But the takeaway is this: it's not that Bernie Sanders is some kind of extraordinary politician. He's not a politician on the level of Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. He's not a politician in terms of like actual charisma on that level. And if you think he is, I don't have to tell you. What it is that his earnest support and vocal support of very, very popular ideas. He
just has time and service, which is what makes him a politician. You're right about. You're right. He doesn't have that.
He's not he's a politician. It's like, but really, he's a public servant. He is a public servant of the.
He's what a politician should be. He's what a politician ought to be. Yeah. And that's what people are responding to, this idea. And it's also what people are not responding to, this idea that he really just wants to talk about the policies. He wants to talk about the policies. He's very pragmatic. He wants to move forward with and kill as few people as possible as opposed to the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. But they simply don't like him. But it cannot be made about him, right? This whole thing cannot be made about him, because it becomes very clear that when you talk about, like, we focus on policy, we focus on party, or we focus on individuals, and that's really an issue that we have, where people are sort of making this hyper focusing on Bernie Sanders and what he's doing. And we see the same thing on, with the resistance. Resistance is still hyper focused on Hillary Clinton. They're hyper focused on Trump. And that's what makes the resistance incredibly difficult to deal with, because they have a very, very specific goal, but no ideology, no real strategy. And it makes them incredibly vulnerable to hucksters and conspiracy theorists, because anyone who sells them the least resistance path to getting to that goal, they're willing to go with. They pay no heed to the cost of getting Trump out of office. And so this nonsense with Louise Mensch or with Eric Garland or with all of these conspiracy theories about Russia, it comes down to the very clear fact that their entire movement is based around being anti-Trump, and that's simply not enough. It's like that is like, insofar that policing tone, it's like, no, I don't, like, just because your stupid plans are earnest doesn't make them any less dangerous or any smarter. And that seems to be what, and that seems to be the mentality. Well, these people are going out there and they're being earnest in their, in what they're trying to do. And it's like, they're trying to defeat Trump. It's like, well, that's not really the issue here. Trying to defeat Trump is all well and good, but I don't know what to tell you, because frankly, Pence is just as bad, if not worse. So is Paul Ryan. So is all of these people. And so your earnest desire to defeat Trump and to not engage critically with what the Democratic Party is actually about, and similarly be unreflexive about who you're letting into the resistance, because that does become a point of contention for me, right? That the resistance seems so willing, and this is because they don't have any ideology. Same with the Democratic Party, and that's what makes the Democratic Party incredibly difficult. The Democratic Party has no coherent ideology, and people talk about it, and I said earlier, but people talk about it as though it's a good thing. Oh, there's no purity test. It's like, no, it's actually a very bad thing. It's a very bad thing for a political party to have very, very amorphous goals and a very, very vague ideology, because you have, Democratic Party is composed of everything from, rabid conservative neoliberals who, war hawks, anti-gay, some anti-black, to socialists. And it's like, a prime example of that, though, right, with the Democratic Party and the lack of real consistent values is AIPAC, right? Like you have left, liberal, whatever groups, Democratic leaning groups, tweeting information about AIPAC leaders gave money for Trump for this, or they helped Trump figure out the wall or whatever. And yet you have leading Democrats, so-called leaders of the resistance, speaking at the damn AIPAC conference. Hillary Clinton gave the most hawkish and filled speech last year at the APAC conference, right?
They all sound exactly the same when they speak about Israel. They all speak in this pseudo sacred tone, this pseudo religious tone. Israel's we have a sacred relationship with Israel. You know, like we are devoted to them. We're devoted to their existence. There was no fundamental difference between Pence's speech and Pelosi's speech. And it's issues like that.
But that was the same thing last year. There was no difference between, and I have never been a person to say Hillary and Donald Trump are exactly the same. But at the same time, on that one issue, they were the same. She was just more extreme and more hardline in their speeches last year. Like she was, hands down. But the Democratic Party, and so here's the thing, right? Like for me, there's a big difference between this national umbrella and these people who these leeches who leech onto the hashtag. This is the thing about hashtag movements, the resistance, because this was the problem that people were attacking Glenn Greenwald about earlier. You know, you're using the hashtag resistance, and I don't recall this many folks getting all upset about when white supremacists and other people use the hashtag Black Lives Matter, for example, or let's just make it even more recent, right? Just yesterday, yes, we're talking about Black women today, but just yesterday was Muslim Woman Day, right? And that hashtag was filled with so much misogyny and hateful language. It was awful. So I don't see people getting, you know, that concern and outrage when people are actually being attacked for their work versus valid critique and criticism being labeled at folks who use a hashtag, right? And the real work that's being done, these people aren't worried about hashtags. When people are like, oh, we need to do a petition or a campaign, and I start trying to explain the social media dynamics, they look at me like, huh? We're used to just talking to people and actually getting work done. So like there is a disconnect between all of that. But let's just be clear. Don't ever back down. If somebody tells you that you're undermining people's work, man, fuck them. Criticize to call their asses out.
There's a genealogy there. It's the same. It's the same people who are saying that about the resistance are the same people who are saying about Hillary Clinton's campaign. These are the same people who are criticizing Bernie Sanders for running against her because she was both simultaneously so strong and motivated and and just unbreakable, like Bruce Willis in the movie Unbreakable. That she could, she's just this big feminist icon. But out of one side of the mouth, and the other side of the mouth, it was like, how dare you criticize her? She's simultaneously strong but weak. If you criticize her,
she came out the woods in time to stand up for her sisters and lead the way, because Hillary's been leading. She's been leading us, and I'm so thankful.
But and don't get me wrong, there's no difference. You can be strong yet vulnerable, right? But the idea that you're so strong and you can be, right? You're so strong,
but you can't be that vulnerable that all of us are supposed to protect you. All millions of us are supposed to protect you.
But here's the thing: you're so vulnerable that you can't take actual cogent critique. It's just like you're so vulnerable that you can't take true criticism. And like you're strong, but also for me to lie, but hey. There's this real big issue with your candidate, insofar that she's kind of a neoliberal war hawk. How dare you say that? Like you're the reason Trump is in office, and it's not. And now we see the same mentality about the resistance. It's like, how dare you critique the resistance? We all need to be in it together to fight Trump. It's just like, okay, I don't know if you're it's your tone. Like, I don't know if you're concerned trolling or if you're just really that entitled. Because a lot of people want to, a lot of people. Automatically jump to the notion that, this is actual concern trolling. People are,
and it's ridiculous. It's so bad.
This is an actual strategic thing that they're concern trolling. They're trying to weaken the movement by pointing to like
Sally Albright. She's tied for concern troll number one, right?
I don't think there's concern. I think a lot of liberals are really just that entitled. They feel as though they are allowed to have a movement or a figure or be any kind of public life and not receive cogent critique about themselves. That any kind of cogent critique or analysis of their behavior, whether it's Zionist feminism, it may be feminism, but it's incredibly problematic. Like any kind of critique like that gets labeled as an attack. It gets labeled.
That's what was so funny about that. Let's talk about that real quickly too. That whole Zionist feminism can exist type of thing. That's why that was so. What was so funny about that is that came literally a week, several days after Gloria Steinem, proudly state there's no such thing as white feminism. And then this whole Zionist feminism conversation happens, and it's like, oh my God, that's peak white feminism, no matter what you call it. Like, you just know.
Let me be very clear. Zionist feminism is absolutely a thing. Because, and again, here's the problem, right? Here's like, and this is why I said about the Democratic Party being, their ideology being incredibly vapid and shallow, and basically whatever you want to put into it. That's every ideology. Every ideology is vapid and shallow. It's just like, and I know people don't like to hear it about their ideologies they ascribe to themselves. They want to believe that there's some kind of ideological essentialism, like, oh well, I'm a socialist, or I'm a progressive, I'm feminist, I'm anti-racist, I'm whatever. And therefore, by adopting that identity or that ideology, that I like that it's an inherently good thing. It's like, no, not really. It's like most ideologies are so ethereal and so vague in whatever they prescribe or whatever their goals are that you can make it fit any. You can make it fit any goal. I mean, you can make it fit any sort of. You bring your own experiences to your ideology and they shape them. And like anyone who says that there's no such thing as Zionist feminism, what they're really saying is like they're denying that there are issues in feminism that are incredibly problematic, or rather, that feminism can be mobilized for incredibly problematic things. And we've seen that though. Like the roots of feminism are incredibly problematic and incredibly racist. Like the suffragettes were racist. Like the critiques going back to the 70s about feminism were that, hey, this is kind of monoethnic. It lacks intersectionality. So I don't know what to tell people who think there's no such thing as Zionist feminism, other than that, hey, you can say that Zionist feminism is a bad thing because it includes Zionism, but you have to understand that people's ideology is always going to be shaped by their experience. That's how you can have TERFs. And the reality is that most people's, and most people who have radical ideologies, whether it be radical feminism or radical anti-racism or radical socialism, a lot of those people, that radicalism ends with people who look like them. A lot of those people, like I hate to bring up Chimamanda Adichie, but that's not surprising. A lot of those
You're so good with name pronunciations.
A lot of those people, like she is.
Because I even say people's names all the time.
No, like she is a good example of how you can have mastered that language of intersectional radical,
absolutely,
intersectional radical ideology you want, but like how it can be vapid because
just briefly explain, just in case anyone isn't familiar with her or what the issue was, just what had happened and how that, because that absolutely ties into this whole conversation, and then we'll take us into.
Yeah, so Chimamanda Adichie is, I would say one of the most popular figures in feminism as it exists. So, like, I would say pop feminism, which is not meant to be derogatory. It's just meant to be like she's pop. Like, her and Roxane Gay. If you go to feminism on Amazon, they had the most popular books. And a few weeks ago, it might be a few weeks ago now, she came out and she made a statement about feminism, or rather about trans women, that indicated that her feminism does not include trans women as women. I can't remember her exact statement, but basically her argument was biologically essentialist. And by that I mean that there are certain biological characteristics about women that that make trans women somehow inherently different or inherently
less than
quote unquote real women. It created this category of real
women and other
women. And it was deeply
rooted she othered trans women in the way that Black women and women of color are often othered. She basically did to us the response. A lot of us, when we were looking at, we're like, damn, that's kind of like how we feel like white women treat us. And what was interesting about that conversation is it made a lot of us rethink our own conceptualizations in this area and how we do engage and use certain language and stuff. But I think what you were just saying about the feminism stuff, it just makes me think about this whole conversation about supporting Tomi Lahren.
Oh my God, Tomi Lahren? No, so let me just finish.
Tomi No Job. Go ahead and finish that point.
Adichie. And so, like, I use her as an example because so basically her ideas around feminism were inherently rooted in a biological essentialist notion of feminism, that there are certain biological categories about about a woman that make them real women versus non-real trans women. And honestly, she mastered in the language of intersectionality and privilege, and she gave all of this sophistic language about how really, if you live your life as a man for a long period of time, you've had male privilege and all other. But really, what it comes down to is that it reveals that her radical feminist, this person who that people felt was incredibly radical, like really her radicalness ended with people who looked like her. Like it ended, like it really. I'm sure she could tell you the difference between, the reason why Black women of color should be included in a feminist agenda, and probably even, non-elite women. But
Right.
Once you get past people who don't like her, nope. It's like their experiences are somehow deviant from the, this kind of thing. And of course, she came out and issued an apology, but like she's a good example of how a lot of these people, again, have mastered the language of whatever movement, ideology that they want. But at the end of the day, the language, the ideology doesn't matter as much as their experience does. You can make it fit whatever you want. It's a post hoc justification or reasoning for your own life. And so, of course, there's white feminism, of course, there's colonial feminism, there's TERFs, there's all these kinds of things, and then it becomes less useful to argue about like what is real feminism, as though there's some sort of ideological.
I think we should have a segment where you and the smooth gentleman talk about feminism.
Oh God,
from a male feminist perspective.
I mean, like we could, but
so from my perspective.
No, because from my perspective, like, I describe myself as a male feminist? Like, see, I'm an actual, third wave feminist in my mentality, right? And what that means to me is that, I'm academic third wave feminist. Like, I've read a lot of like the Butlers, right, the Haraways, the Fraser. Like, I've never really read Chimamanda's book. I've never really read Roxane Gay's book. Like, I've read more stuff about like Fraser, like really just annoyingly obtuse work, and I do, and in fact, believe that gender does not exist. Rather, as a biology, it's not a bio. It's rooted in biology, but it's a social construct, and that as long as we maintain a gender binary or even a gender classification system, there's going to be inequality. That once you start classifying things, once you start separating things into categories, you innately create essential qualities for those categories. That's just the way, you look for patterns, you look for a hierarchy. It's just what happens. So as long as we still engage in that kind of activity, we're going to be falling into the trap of saying, well, okay, well, this thing is real in some, in a biological sense, not necessarily in a social, because it is real in a social sense. Absolutely. But that's not the same thing. But we should definitely, we promised our viewers we talk about Rachel Blackface Dolezal.
Oh my God.
And I really, so like, I didn't want to, and I wasn't going to, but the issue becomes like everyone else's, and so I don't really care about her because, white people trying to like co-opt Black coolness or like, as a way to increase their social capital without actually sort of adopting the negative aspects of Blackness is nothing new. That's been going on for, with our music, with our labor, with our culture for a long time. But like this, the mental gymnastics that the media seems to be going through to give her the benefit of the doubt, or like to elevate her to this position of victimhood, like she was just trying to express herself, is problematic, not only from the racial angle or the gender angle, but also it has really.
What did she say earlier? She tried to explain that race is a lie anyway, so her lie about a lie doesn't really matter. Like two lies make a right, so she's fine. It's like it don't work. It's not how this works.
It's so complicated. Like her mentality is so complicated. So like she describes herself as a trans Black Pan-African bisexual mother activist artist. That like that's her idea. Those are her, that's the way she self-identifies, which is kind of a mouthful. And I hate to tell someone that they're how they self-identify, it doesn't matter. But it's just
you go ahead. The comment, how I feel about it. I'm so fucking tired of her. She needs like the fact that she has a book deal and the fact that she's on the circuit. She was on CBC radio, Canadian Broadcast Radio. She was on Good Morning America, NBC Black, The Root. Everyone's covering her, and it's like, shut the hell up. Like her book should be at the bottom. It should not be a top seller on Amazon. It should not be, she shouldn't be working and just telling her harrowing story. Because let's be clear, right? If she had been a Black person passing all these years, there would not be all this excitement and interest in her. Like there just really would not. Let's just be real. The fact that a white woman deceived Black people for so long, because personally my thing was there's no way, and here's a chiropractic conversation that I raised when the story first came out. There's no way that she was able to pass as Black for as long as she did without anyone else around her knowing and playing part in that whole charade.
Well, so here's the thing. Okay,
that's what's the worst part. No. That's the part of it or whatever. And that's what's more interesting, because it shouldn't matter, right? Because if she in all her learned manners admits that race is a social construct, it doesn't matter. If you want to live and exist in a community and around a people, you don't have to make a mockery of people's existence to do so. You don't have to position yourself and pretend to have an experience and be a type of person and give advice and admonish other. I've talked to people who actually took classes with her, right? Like through all that, met a lot of very interesting, wonderful folks doing all this Bernie stuff. I've met a white woman who had dreads while in her class, and she railed at this woman for having dreads and for co-opting Black culture when this heifer has been co-opting Black culture a good portion of her damn adult life.
But see, that's the thing, right? And this is what makes it into we're gonna have to break this whole thing down because this is so disgusting for different reasons. But like that right there is the problem, right? So
like she went out of her way, white people who are trying to work through their own stuff, right? And become and embrace different cultures and understand. She went out of her way, and there are multiple accounts and stuff like this, to actually admonish and denigrate people for doing something, and she's doing far worse than any of that.
But see, the issue with that is this, and this comes down to how she was pretending to be Black, right? And this comes she was overperforming Blackness. So for her, it was a minstrel act. Sans Black. It was a minstrel act, right? She was acting. Because here's the thesis of this, right? You can't feel Black intrinsically because Blackness is not. And this is what she said in her little, one of her little speeches. How she felt Black on the inside. That's not a thing. Right, you can't be white and then feel Black on the inside, sans some kind of social context. That's what
because that's also based on her stereotypes of what Blackness is, what Black womanhood is. Because how the hell do you feel Black on the inside? I feel like Maria from Sound of Music. Nah, fuck her. I hate Maria and Tony in West Side Story, but that's another session. I feel like Maria from The Sound of Music on the inside. Okay,
but see, that's the problem, right? So she went out there and so this is why she's getting so much attention, because simultaneously she's doing multiple things.
Yeah,
3 things I could think of. First, she's making it seem as though race really does not matter, and that it's some kind of identity that people can wear and they can float in and out
Absolutely.
of. And she's doing it from the position of white privilege, and as it intersects with white femininity. Because let's be honest, I'll be honest with you, if a white man did this, we would be having a whole different conversation.
We would have a very different conversation. We'd be having a very different conversation.
But she's able, so she's
John B. We're looking at you, bro. We're looking at you real hard. Been looking at you like 30 years, real hard, bro.
She's indicative of something that we don't really talk about enough. That the civil rights movement, more than anyone else, benefited white women over any other group, and we see the reason why that is
the implementation of affirmative action policies. Yes,
implementation of affirmative action policies benefited white women more than any other group, and the reason
why that's been researched and studied and proven. Yes,
multiple times, and the issue is because they intersect in positions of power, right? Like they're able to throw
access proximity to power.
Proximity to generational wealth, they still accumulate generational wealth in ways that Black, people of color have not been able to. And there are certain stigmas that surround Black women that don't surround white women. And so she is this example of the fact that in certain ways she's able to adopt this veil of victimhood. She was just confused about her identity. She, inherently pure, et cetera, et cetera. Like she had pure emotion. She's wanted to feel like she's wanted to, be who she felt like on the inside, which is not a thing. What she wanted to do was she wanted to co-opt another group's identity, because she felt that was a way for her to garner more social capital for herself.
I don't know. I was just gonna say I don't know if I can't show the clip, but I don't know how y'all if y'all have watched Atlanta. But there was remember that you've watched Atlanta, right, Brandon?
I have not watched Atlanta.
Oh my God, how are we gonna have a conversation? Anyway, on the show Atlanta, it's been one season with Childish Gambino, aka Donald Glover. It comes on FX. It's actually going to be on hiatus until like 2018 till next year because he's filming the new Star Wars. He's playing young Lando Calrissian. Anyway, more info than you wanted to know about Donald Glover. But there was an episode where they were watching a TV show and they did a segment about this kid who was transracial. He's really like a heavy set. I think he's only about like 18 or 19, but he said on the inside, he really feels like he's a middle-aged white man. So he does things like he goes to the farmer's market. And he's like, my family doesn't understand me. Like, it's just so hard being me. So, they were playing on the whole trans, but it's so hilarious because he's just like, I'm a 45-year-old white man. He has like a condo. Like it's hilarious. But like, that's the problem. And this is where transracialism falls apart, right? Because it only works for someone who can look racially ambiguous or mixed. It does not work. I can't tell you that I'm really a 55-year-old white retiree who does like social causes for fun. Like,
oh no, you can though. See, that's the thing.
Like, but it's not gonna work. Nobody's gonna believe me. But here's not gonna work.
Here's the reality, right? And this is the
important,
not the important part.
It don't work like that.
And the thing is that like, you're like who you like. This whole idea is like how you feel on the inside, and when it comes to race, is irrelevant. Is a joke because race is race is determined socially through like interactions with society. It's not something you feel on the inside. There is no real biological component to race insofar that there's nothing biologically intrinsic about you that makes you black. Apart from literal just melanin. Like there are no characteristics of blackness that could be said to make someone feel black, or rather feel what that means from a social implication. This is the second issue. She's putting forth this notion. This is also attractive to people, that there's a biological component to race, right? That she felt black on the inside, and she was just trying to make her outside match her inside because that's the way she felt.
And let's talk about that, right? Because you can, because like my father, right? My father, I'm sure, would probably say, based on, stereotypical notions about what somebody his age in the 70s should have been feeling in terms of quote unquote blackness, that there were tension. I mean, I'm sure all of us and our parents, even if you're whether you're white, Asian, doesn't matter. Like, I'm sure there are times where we don't feel like stereotypically what our group is supposed to be. And here goes into the social construct part, right? Because like you said, other than like using, phenotypical and biological aspects to group us together, there really is no valid, and that's not even necessarily a valid base. It's just a grouping mechanism, right? So this whole she felt black on the inside. Bitch, watching BET don't make you black.
But see, that's
cornrows don't make you black. My cornrows
that falls apart is the way she chose to be black, right? And this is where I come down to the fact that how disrespectful she was. She wasn't just black, she was
blackity black, power to the people. I'm proud black woman, racial justice black.
She was overperforming black. She worked for the NAACP. She took African American studies classes,
and she could have did all of that as a white woman, which is the problem.
Yeah,
NAACP does actually have white leadership historically and currently. There are white African American studies professors.
She simply just wanted to act black. She wanted to be black, right? She still was veiling herself in that white privilege. And then this comes down to like that third issue, like the one that seems only tangentially related to why people are talking about this. Is functionally because the idea of racialism or whatever she calls it, transracism, it's a lot of things. In a lot of ways, it delegitimizes transgender.
And now she's bisexual too. The community needed yank us back with
it delegitimizes the struggle of trans people, and both trans women and trans men, because it sort of presents this notion that it's exactly the same thing. Like, I don't understand why, if people can be transgender or transsexual or whatever, I don't understand why I can't be transracial. It's like, because those are two different things. Right. And so it's appearing in this media because people, like, again, sometimes liberals are so quick to be inclusive that they go full 180 and become bigots. And it's like they fall for these stupid traps. But like this whole obsession with her is so delegitimizing for people who actually are going through issues of gender identity issues. People who like literally do not feel as though they are in the right body, that their actual sort of biology, like this sort of this psychological rejection of biology, which or rather that exists within trans people, that is actual a physical reaction, not a feeling. This notion, like that's really what it is. She's positioning the idea of trans, this is for like an umbrella term, transness as a feeling. I just felt black, so I decided to be black. Trans people don't feel like men. They don't feel like women. They are. Like you were like, you can't simply feel black. And just like you can't simply feel like you're a woman. Like you simply have, it's a biological reaction that exists in people who are trans gender that cannot exist within people who are transracial, because that's not a thing, right? There's no component to that would even make that make sense. So people are positioning this like because it's the trifecta. You get to treat race like it doesn't matter, socially. You get to treat race like it's somehow that there are certain, like, her love of rap music and desire to be in the NAACP was a biological thing, and you get to treat trans people. You get to treat trans people like it's not biology. It's just a feeling that they had one day, and it's just like, and so I can understand why that's kind of attractive, I guess,
right?
It seems to make that, it seems to, but really what it is, and let's just skip on. It's this desire from white liberals to adopt identities that make them oppressed. Like we see it all the time. Like it's like this idea, white liberals are trying to escape whiteness by adopting oppression. By adopting, whether that means adopting blackness, whether that means adopting some kind of obscure, gender politic. HuffPo Queer just did that thing last week where they declared everyone who was kinky was queer. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with you people? I was just like, queer people have enough issues with, reclaiming that word, with sort of with self-identifying, with having to explain what that means, to not be grouped into people who have decided that, well, because I enjoy specific fetishes, that I'm not, that then therefore I'm not, I'm not straight, or I don't succumb to sort of general heteronormative cis patriarchy nonsense.
This is actually a debate conversation we've been having internally with the women that I've done the ladies roundtables with before, about this social construction of sexuality and gender, and the different like labels and how we categorize things, whatever that. Like, I've realized that I was wondering, because we were talking about this, and I was wondering, because I look at, younger folks and this whole conversation about fluidity. And it's not that fluidity is a new concept. I think that, folks just now have language, right? Have words and concepts for describing. And they're talking about pansexual. I'm like, what the hell are y'all talking about? I'm like, growing up, we had straight, we had gay, and we had bi. Y'all inventing new stuff, but really taking the time to converse and talk with folks. A lot of things are like old concepts, and this stuff is on the spectrum, right? And there are different gradations of things. So that's not to undermine, other people's, experiences and stuff. But for some folks, they do view things in a very fluid manner. So these needs to compartmentalize the experiences of others for whatever purposes, which, when you see, entities like HuffPost Queer doing this stuff, it's was it a BuzzFeed? There's something else that did something similar like that recently. It was like, oh my God, super fail. But this is what we got to be careful about, this social media driven pop culture age too right now, because I think there's a lot of harmful things that are being done in terms of development of identity, right? Go ahead. I mean, we talk about identity politics being bad, but I think this is a way we see identity being manipulated, not just for entertainment value, but also in terms of being able to push certain narratives, socially and politically.
So there is a conversation. So there is a conversation to be had about gender dynamics and the idea of transgender people, and what that means from a social perspective, and living in a society that has such a strict gender binary. There is a conversation to be had about that, right? It's a conversation that has a lot of pitfalls and requires a lot of nuance that you can have about that conversation. Like, well, hey,
and I'll be the first to admit that I know when I know my limits, And I know that I'm still trying to learn the proper way to even engage the topic. So I already know not to start trying to lead or have those conversations. But go ahead.
But here's the thing, right? It's because but as a society, we're working through a lot of stuff. We're working
through
not only destabilizing the gender binary and understanding that gender is a spectrum, but understanding that sex is a spectrum. That insofar that sex is a description of biological attributes, even those exist on a spectrum, and it's not just male and female. We're still trying to contend with intersex people. We're still trying to contend with a lot of things that maybe as a society, maybe as a population, if we didn't have such a rigid dichotomy, a rigid dynamic, that we wouldn't be going through those issues, or rather they would be more muted, or rather there'd be a lot more wiggle room, and maybe a lot less sort of a lot less of this kind of the psychological aspect to come into play. What I will say about Rachel Dolezal is it's just offensive nonsense. Like the idea of transracialism is offensive nonsense, because frankly, the idea that you needed to be this black and not just why, if it doesn't matter, why pretend to be black? Like if race doesn't matter, why even do it? And so it becomes this really weird issue where like race simply somehow doesn't matter, but it's intrinsic to her identity. And I think, speaking for a lot of Black people, yes, just because something is a social construct and it's only real from the social perspective doesn't delegitimize the fact that it's a part of your identity and that it has real effects on your mental health, your
absolutely
your health. That's true, but that's only insofar as you're responding to a context. Like sans a lot of issues, race wouldn't be a thing, and that's what social construct means. Like, yeah, it's a interpretation of biology.
Yeah, and acknowledging that race shouldn't be a thing or wouldn't be a thing, but for does not take away from the fact that, like you just said, it is a thing, it is an issue. Gender is a thing, it is an issue, even though it shouldn't be, it ought not to be. I mean, that's very well and good, but unfortunately, that's what we have to work with. So we can't. No, I agree with you, and I think we need to kind of start wrapping before I fall asleep on air again.
It's all right. Hey, whatever.
But I did want to talk about, since we were talking about, transracial and people like having certain identities, this Diddy Revolt TV lawsuit.
Must we talk about Diddy?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Diddy. So Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, was being sued. Sean Diddy Combs is being sued by executives who were fired allegedly. They're claiming this is reverse racism. They were white employees working for the predominantly Black Revolt TV, and their allegation is that they basically they were basically almost like a hostile work environment type of complaint, that other staffers were problematic, or that they were told that they didn't understand the culture and didn't understand the culture of guests, predominantly Black guests, hip hop artists, R&B artists and things of that sort, athletes, etc. And part of the coverage, like this was last week, this got Donkey of the Day. The New York Daily News writes a piece, and they call out The Breakfast Club, which is one of the lead shows on Power 105, which I never looked at their corporate structure, but I'm guessing Diddy's Revolt TV owns that in that structure, or it's part owner, or however that works. But so they got Donkey of the Day because basically they said the Power 105 was the one that was being sued, and they're not. It's the parent company, Revolt TV. But what was interesting, though, is this notion that they were discriminated against because they were let go because they couldn't do their job because they didn't understand the culture and the environment that they're in. And so I was just thinking about like the connection to Rachel Dolezal being transracial. Had they been more transracial, then maybe that wouldn't have been an issue. But what has come out is that, Diddy, they actually... They say the claims are not married because apparently they filed a complaint first with the EEOC commission, and it was dismissed. And there was no finding that there was anything discriminatory in their firing. But like, it's interesting because Charlemagne and God, he's one of the three. The Breakfast Club is a 3-person show. And so there was a tagline that said, "White people are not welcome behind the scenes of Power 105's The Breakfast Club radio show, a new lawsuit charges. And this is what he's responding to. He goes, man, this is hilarious to me. For the record, they suing Revolt TV and talking about Revolt TV, not Power 105 or The Breakfast Club. But this article is still hilarious. Lawsuit says the white people got fired for not knowing the culture. I mean, most executives at all these companies don't know the culture and need to be fired, but that's not the point. I've been laughing for 10 minutes straight. Please make the distinction between Revolt TV, Power 105, and The Breakfast Club. We are not the same. Thanks, Black privilege. Charlemagne is ignorant for a lot of reasons, but I got to give him kudos for the hella petty in this post.
We had a question about race being, is race biological? Like, it's a social construct. A lot of people know what that means. But social construct means that it's a category or some sort of identifying factor that is based on a biological trait that is not necessarily one-to-one what is being a sort of ascribed to it. So genes aren't distributed in sort of racial blocks. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like genes on a whole are distributed clinally in reaction to certain sort of environmental stressors. That's just how it works. You don't have all Black people with the same genes, and I'm sure like anyone can tell you that it's just distributed based on your latitude. That's how they're distributed. And insofar identities, no one's 100% anything, because race and all of these things are performative. They race, gender, sexuality, etc., exist in fluidity. They exist in the moment. They exist in social context and social context. That's what intersectionality is about, right? So people don't know what intersectionality is about anymore, because people just seem to mean, like, I don't know. Intersectionality has got a really bad name recently, because apparently people, like liberals, mean when they say intersectional, what they mean is you list two different identities. Like you'll say Black woman, or Black man, or like lesbian woman. Well, that's not really what it is. Intersectionality is about power. And it's about social context. Intersectionality is about the notion that, hey, as a human being, you exist as a confluence of a lot of different identities that become more or less important depending on the context. So you'll say, hey, yeah, I'm a man, but I'm a Black man. And so while we have a patriarchy, if I'm in a situation where I'm surrounded by women, but they're all white, I'm still in a lesser place than they are. Society doesn't exist to shuttle men to the top. It exists to shuttle a specific type of man to the top, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of this comes down to identity is a reaction to context and environment. It's not really a thing that you can. It's not really a thing that you are. It's a thing that you do. Like race is a thing that you do, or that you have ascribed to you. It's not really something that you are in a lot of ways, if that makes sense. Same with gender. You perform gender. You aren't gender. You perform culture. You don't have culture. It's like it's a very complicated thing, but it's meant to illustrate the fact that outside of context, as a human being, you don't really exist, which is, I guess, philosophical. But I'm sure you, like, if you think about it, it makes sense. But it's a very floofy academic way of saying, but for society and but for social situations and various other environmental factors, you don't really have these things that you think of as immutable. But for America, you don't really have, or rather, but for community, you don't really have race or any of these other things. And it's meant to illustrate the fact that these things that you think are real are not even really real, and things you think that are fixed are not really fixed. They are in fact incredibly fluid, incredibly amorphous, and incredibly complex to understand. And that's why when Hillary Clinton comes out and and speaks on Maxine Waters, or when Gloria Steinem comes out and says when Gloria Steinem comes out and says women who vote for Hillary are embarrassment to women, it's like, whoa, what kind of women? What do you mean by women? It's the reason why Zionist feminism makes sense, because it's just like, you got to understand that a lot of these people don't see women, don't see brown women as women. They see them as something less than. It just is what it is.
Absolutely agree.
We're gonna start means testing feminism. We're gonna start means testing everything. And by
we're gonna means test everything.
Ideological testing. Like there has to be ideological tests for stuff, and I know that really. Go. I understand that the idea. I understand that the idea of purity tests make people, especially liberals and people who don't like the idea of being judged, uncomfortable. But you find these purity tests are actually incredibly important for sharpening the point of your movement. Sharpening the point of your movement. And I know someone in the chat room said the idea of like identity fluidity doesn't really make sense outside of academia, or like doesn't make any sense. It's just not accepted. That's true. That's absolutely true. And I totally understand that. And it's not really something that you have to accept, and it's not meant as a way to delegitimize however you feel, or whatever you are, or whatever, however you define yourself. It's more meant to have you understand it didn't have to be that way.
Right.
It's like that's the larger point. It's not that how you feel about yourself, or how you actually or who you are, or like the defining characteristics of your life are illegitimate. It's about saying that it didn't have to be that way. So the things that you are thinking of as being fixed, as being inevitable, as being somehow intrinsic to who you are, or having essential qualities, really don't. It's like a lot of things that you experience or that you feel are a result of the social situations you found yourself in. And yes, those social situations are a lot of ways dictated by certain things that are certain social constructs that are ascribed to your biology or even your geography, but they're not really it's not that they're not, you find hard to think. It's not that they're not real. It's just that they didn't have to be real. If that makes sense. They didn't have to.
Right.
People think it is the way it do, but it be. Like it didn't have to be like this, but it is, and we have to contend with that. This is not to go full class limitativism and go only class matters. This is to go like, hey, at the end of the day, things could have been different. Like we could have been separated into groups based on anything, really anything, hair color, eye color. It could have been any of those things, but we chose certain things because whatever. It's just the way things things hashed out. A lot of it's arbitrary. I think that's the point. Like, a lot of stuff is arbitrary.
Absolutely. So that's the petty party. Hi.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for this.
Thank you for joining us. We'll definitely have the kinks out next week. Ben kind of trying to, because we're trying to make sure we can start as soon as Ben ends, and then I usually don't do actual production because you notice we don't have OBS tonight, but that's all right because we're going to have it all worked out. Where at least at the moment we will be doing Tuesday nights at 10. If that changes, if things get petty and we get moved to another night or time, we'll definitely let you guys know ahead of time. But thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we're gonna get some graphics and stuff going. It's gonna be great. Everything's
gonna get some graphics and stuff going too.
It's gonna be fun.
You're in good hands with Brandon and Anoa.
You're in awful hands,
Brand.
But Anoa will keep me in.
That's Brand. I love my Brand. So this has been fun, and I appreciate you guys so much. But it's late, and I don't want to fall asleep on air. I have done that once before. So stay petty. Love you guys much. Good night.
Have a wonderful evening.